So how about some British psychedelia? My ranked top best British psychedelic records of the 60s. I got to narrow it down, so it's going to take me a bit and then rank them. So it'll be a few days before I tape this, but well, maybe we'll see how it goes. So here we go. Hey again, it's Mazzy, and you all seem to like the psychedelia, don't you? I've done a top ranked best of my favorite San Francisco psychedelia and one of Los Angeles and sort of the whole California, the whole West Coast scene, all in the 60s. So I've been wanting to do a British version, UK version from the 60s. I've had some requests for it, so here we go. Now, just to kind of beat a dead horse and remind you, I use this, and the definition of psychedelia for me is the psychedelic scene. So not every single title will be drenched in colorful psychedelia music, okay? No matter how many times I say this, there's those commenters that say that's not psychedelia, but this is my take on it. I'd love other people to do their takes, and if you want to just focus in on pure psychedelia, be my guest. Also, a couple of caveats. These are mostly records that those of you who grew up with this music, as I did, will know about. They're not really deep dive, obscure tracks, because there's a lot of great psychedelia that happened that really sort of was bubbled way under, and you really had to find it. But these are my top 30 records, my favorite psychedelic records. And again, I'm only showing records that I have. There's some records that I enjoy that I don't have. I don't have any Soft Machine. I don't have any Hawkwind. So you're not going to see that in this list. I don't have any Kaleidoscope, the British Kaleidoscope. So we're not going to see that. So I'm going to just say that off the top and suggest ones I should get in of those bands. And any other bands, I'm open to suggestions. I'm going to start out at number 30. Number 30 is the incredible string band. This is Wee Tam, amongst my favorites. Now, I'm going to put two in here. I don't have this one on vinyl, but I really also love 5,000 Spirits of the Layers of the Onion. Neo-folk psychedelia produced by the great expatriate Joe Boyd, who would leave Cambridge and Boston and move to England, moved to London to be A&R for Elektra Records and signed them to Elektra Records. Also was involved in the whole late 60s British folk scene and producing Fairport Convention and a number of other people. Nick Drake, also the very first Pink Floyd single, and opened the UFO Club, which was really the psychedelic major London club in 1966, 67. To me, London, it was like the mirror image of San Francisco, very much so. There was this underground psychedelic incubation thing that was happening with elongated jams and psychedelic light shows, and it was the closest. There was more of that type of stuff happening in London and San Francisco than in New York or even in Los Angeles at the time. It was a different scene. So to me, it's seemingly that London and San Francisco had a more sort of brother-sister, twin brother relationship at the time. So, number 30, incredible string band. Number 29, the Yaddle Race Birthday Party. This is an original copy I got on Liberty Records. I do have a UK reissue, different cover. Of course, the claim to fame later on for this, it's very pop psych. It's more of a pop than deep, dark psychedelia, but Jeff Lynne, who would later go on to join The Move, and then, of course, the Electric Light Orchestra is in this. So the Idle Race Birthday Party, very psychedelic, very pop, very catchy tunes. I mean, he was always a great songwriter in terms of the catchiness of that 60s sound. The third, actually, Moody Blues album, and this is In Search of the Lost Chord. This is the second of their thematic albums, obviously following up Days of Future Past. Their first album with Denny Laine was more sort of blues-based rock and roll. But after Days of Future Past, they really got on this roll about thematic poetry, orchestration, psychedelic pop in a way. Now, for me, I followed them for a long time, and after a while, I think this thematic thing they kept doing wore out its welcome for me personally. Even though I have all their records on compact disc, I did have a lot of their records on vinyl, and I would buy them in the 70s, late 60s and the 70s. I think after this, they were wearing out their welcome a little bit on some of their records. Every record had good tracks, but I think this is a really good record. So coming in at number 28 is Moody Blues, In Search of the Lost Chord. You know, I think they were searching for that chord for many years after that album. Coming at number 27, Wind of Change. This is Eric Burt and the Animals. This is where the Animals morphed into a different group, a little more psychedelic blues. On this is the great song, San Francisco Nights, you know, about the whole summer of love scene, psychedelia, strobe lights, beam. Unfortunately, being a native San Franciscan, I think he was unaware that there were never many warm San Francisco nights. So I think he kind of got that wrong. But there's some good stuff on here. Interesting cover that he would do of the Rolling Stones Painted Black on here. A lot of psychedelic stuff, very dirge-like, but a cool record. Number 27, Eric Burton and the Animals, Winds of Change. 26. I'm showing these two together. I'm including them both in 26 because this is Evolution by the Hollies, and the American version, Dear Eloise, King Midas in reverse. And I love the cover of the UK version better. This was more psychedelic with the inclusion of those singles, King Midas in reverse. One of the great singles, the last Hollies album that Graham Nash would be in. You know, he moved to California and then the whole Crosby, Stills, Nash thing would happen. He didn't really like the direction here and wanted something different. But love this record. Those I think this is the best track list for me personally. The more pop, again, pop psychedelic, harmony-esque, beautiful, beautiful record. But this is definitely the coolest cover. I mean, come on. There you go, mono and stereo. This is a reissue. This is an original Epic stereo version. Coming in at number 25, close behind the last one, Eric Burton and the Animals again. I kind of wanted to put this higher. I love this record, but number 25 I think suits it. The Twain Shall Meet, Eric Burton and the Animals. But Monterey is on here. Obviously, his response to attending the Monterey Pop Festival in 1967. And one of my favorite singles that I just fell in love with, and the sound was never great on the single, but was Sky Pilot. Sky Pilot, I still have the 45. It's a long song. I'm thinking 7 minutes or so, 6-7 minutes, and it continues. So part one is on side one of the 45, part two. And it just goes in this great sort of bagpipe, just explosion of World War One. Really cool record, really cool song. Great psychedelic album. Orange and Red Beams, the final song on side one, is a very dirgy, psychedelic, really kind of sparse but beautiful piece. And the whole Eastern sounds was happening around this time in 66, 67, 68. Obviously, George Harrison has contributed, bringing the sitar to pop music, hooking up with Ravi Shankar, introducing people like me to this psychedelic scene and everything. So coming in number 25, The Twain Shall Meet, Eric Burton and the Animals. Coming in at number 24, this is an album that's a favorite of mine, and I didn't get it in the 60s. I got this in the 70s, and I really got into this band because of their album Shazam, and this is The Move. And this is a wonderful record. This is psychedelic, heavy pop. Cherry Blossom Clinic, Roy Wood is in here, Fire Brigade. More poppy than these other psychedelic things. They would go on to do some heavy things with Carl Wayne. Obviously, later on, Jeff Lynne would join The Move, and it would morph into ELO. But coming in at number 24, this wonderful record by The Move, their debut album, The Move, The Move. Coming in at number 23, The Yardbirds. pop psychedelia, and because this direction is why Eric Clapton would leave the band, he wanted more of the blues thing, and they were going into the psychedelic thing. Of course, in this country, in the States, I really love the single Over, Under, Sideways, Down, and that might, well, obviously For You Love was probably the one that I get into first, but I love this single, and I know a lot of people thought it was too poppy, and they went in a different direction than their blues thing. It's got a blues-based with psychedelic tinges, so it's not pure psychedelia, but it's right in that perfect pocket of time period in the UK. So the Yardbirds, Roger, the engineer. Coming at number 22, I almost made this higher because I just absolutely love this record, and it's a wonderful, like, intense psychedelic record, and that's The Crazy World of Arthur Brown, his debut record. Track Records, which was the label that Pete Townsend and Kit Lambert, their Who's manager, started. Jimi Hendrix was on it, obviously the Who were on it, Thunderclap Newman. This side one to me is a perfect side. I think side two is really good too, but side one is the one that I think is an amazing record. Of course, there was a 45 in this country. In the US, Fire was big on the charts. It was played on FM. What a great AM FM cross hits, the edited version, obviously, not the preamble, the prelude, Nightmare, that goes into the fanfare and Fire poem, and then obviously the great song Fire. Love this record to pieces. Love that cover, so psychedelic. 1968, incredible record. So coming in at number 22 is Arthur Brown, Fire. Coming at number 21, a great record to play on a lazy Sunday is Small Faces, Odd Gone's Nut Gone, Celebrate, Flake, Tobacco. Odd Gone's Flake, you know, it's actually called Odd Gone's Nut Gone, Flake. Round, really silly packaging, but it stood out. But the song Lazy Sunday Afternoon was the hit, as much as they had a hit off this record. Of course, great Small Faces, Ronnie Lane, Steve Marriott. I like this record a lot. It tells a story. It's conceptual. You know, some people feel that the storytelling should be off it, but I think it's really an interesting record. So coming in number 21, the Small Faces, Round. Now I did a back-to-back thing here, and I don't usually do that. Coming in number 20, Small Faces again, We Are All But Small Faces. This is the better record of the two. This has great songs, and to me, one of the greatest psychedelic pop singles of the 60s is Itchygoo Park, and it opens up this Marriott and Lane co-composition. One of the first songs I can really remember with amazing phase shifting in it. It's just a great, great pop single. Also on here is a Tin Soldier, which is a great song, and Here Comes the Nice, about a drug dealer. Really good album. There are but 4 Small Faces by the Small Faces, coming in at number 20. Coming in at number 19 is Procol Harum's debut album. Of course, I almost should show the American edition because this is the rare Italian pink cover edition, but I think this looks so much cooler. But the American edition adds the single Wider Shade of Pale, which is probably one of the great psychedelic pop songs of the 1960s, and it's the most played song in the history of the UK based on radio and jukebox plays. So, you know, the black and white cover, the original cover of the US one, the US album sounds a bit muddy, but I wanted to showcase this. So let's put these together and show you the UK and the American version probably at number 19, because Wider Shade of Pale is a great, great song. Of course, this has the original version of Conquistador, which would later turn up on the great live album with Edmonton Orchestra that was on Chrysalis. Also on here is Il Tutte Diamande, Quite Rightly So, which is an Italian version of a song that would be on their second album. So Procol Harum, number 19, one of my favorite bands. Gary Brooker, great blue-eyed, soulful singer, vocalist, Matthew Fisher on keyboards, and Robin Trower on guitar. And I wish that nucleus of a band stayed together. And of course, B.J. Wilson, very underrated drummer, and I love him so much, number 19. Coming at number 18, a record that I play constantly, and I'm going to show the box set. And this is A Gift from a Flower to a Garden, Donovan. This came out in a single version, Where Your Love Like Heaven, as two separate albums. But I just love this box set. As far as I recall, this is the first box set of a pop album that ever came out. If you know differently, put it down in the comments, aside from any kind of compilation or anything. Obviously, classical records came out like this and other types of records. This is amazing because it has the song Where Your Love Like Heaven, which is a beautiful pop psychedelic song, and a lot of folk music. Folk, psychedelic, great kind of almost like infrared cross-process photography on the cover, which would be on the Where Your Love Like Heaven album. Unfortunately, his catalog got really screwed up in the UK, which is really a shame because I am a big Donovan fan. I think he is a major artist and a really big part of the psychedelic and the psychedelic pop scene and folk scene of the 1960s. Made some of the greatest records in the 1960s. So number 18, A Gift from a Flower to a Garden by Donovan. Number 17, Traffic's debut, Heaven Is in Your Mind. It's really too bad Dave Mason isn't on the cover here. Come on, guys. Tempestuous relationship with Steve Winwood and Dave Mason. Of course, the song that was all over the radio was Mr. Fantasy. They would change the name of this album to Mr. Fantasy. A really great record. They had Chris Wood as a flautist and Jim Capaldi as another great vocalist and drummer, of course, Stevie Winwood. This also has Berkshire Poppies, Smiling Faces, Paper Sun, and Hole in My Shoe, the great song by Dave Mason. Really psychedelic pop songs and perfect psychedelic pop songs. Coming number 16. 16, this is the Rolling Stones record that Rolling Stones freaks love to hate, but I think it's one of the great psychedelic albums of the 60s. And Stones did psychedelia really well on this record, despite Marianne Faithfull's famous quote that the Stones just didn't do psychedelic very well. I think this is a great record. Brian Jones sort of nudged them in that direction after the Beatles were kind of already in that direction. Obviously, using the same photographer, Michael Cooper, to photograph Sgt. Pepper in this. Coincidence? I think not. But anyway, on its own, forget Sgt. Pepper, forget what the Beatles were doing. This is a fantastic record, and it holds up to this day. Of course, She's a Rainbow was a great, great single. Sing Us All Together, 2000 Man, Citadel, 2000 Light Years from Home. There's not a bad track on this. This is a great mood piece. Obviously, the lenticular cover, they wanted to do something to follow up, and I don't know how many times I tried doing this maze when I was a kid, when I got this record at the end of 1967. Okay, number 15, and I know, people are gonna wonder why this record is so low. It's not low, it's 15 records in the 1960s of psychedelic, but it's a great debut of Jimi Hendrix Experience. Of course, Purple Haze, Manic Depression, Wind Cries Mary, Fire, Foxy Lady, Are You Experienced? I mean, this is a perfect record, a great psychedelic record, one of the great records in 1967. Coming in number 15, Jimi Hendrix Experience. I don't need to say any more about it. I love this record. And some wanker out there is going to say, oh my God, you put Procol Harum, Shine On Brightly over Are You Experienced? What are you? Are you nuts? This is, from my point of view, when this record came out, I played this literally a month, 2 or 3 times every night when I got home. I love this record, Shine On Brightly. It hit me in a different way. Of course, come on. I'm a realist. I get it. I understand. More people know this record than this record. But it doesn't matter. This is a personal take of the best psychedelic records in the UK of the 60s for me, from my point of view, what I grew up to. Love this cover. I always loved this cover. The UK cover was different. It was an illustration. I think this is the better cover. Of course, it has Shine On Brightly. Quite Rightly So opens up, which is a beautiful, soulful kind of opening. Gary Brooker had such a soulful voice, and this record is produced by Danny Cordell, who worked later with Joe Cocker. Co-produced, assistant producer on this was a young Tony Visconti, obviously, with later with Bowie and a lot of other artists. But side two is the pinnacle, Inhaled 'Twas in I. Someone might think of that as sort of a psychedelic prog piece, overwrought, so many different layers and components, but it's a brilliant piece of music. Just love this record. So I think it's a perfect record, and for me it holds up, and it's perfect for the psychedelia best of. The Who Sell Out. This is, I haven't opened these yet. This is the reissue expanded version, but I do have an original and I do have another reissue. But the Who were not a psychedelic band. The Who were mod, almost power pop, rock and roll band. This is the closest they came to psychedelic, especially with I Can See for Miles. Great song. But this is pop, commercialized response to the destruction of pirate radio in the United Kingdom in 1967. Very underrated album. If you watch my Who videos, this made it almost to the top. Sometimes it is my number one favorite Who album. But this is an amazing pop masterpiece as far as I'm concerned. Talks about pop culture, pop art. More pop than psychedelic, of course, but there's some great stuff on this record. So coming in at number 13, The Who Sell Out. Coming in at number 12, SF Sorrow by the Pretty Things. Probably the first rock opera predating Tommy. This is a beautiful record. This is a record that I didn't get into right away. I didn't get into this record until the 1970s. I kept hearing about SF Sorrow. I kept hearing about it. The thing about the Pretty Things, they morphed from blues and hard rock to psychedelia to glam rock in the 70s and everything in between. And they're one of actually Jimmy Page's favorite bands. And they were later signed to Swan Song in the 70s. Led Zeppelin's label, but wonderful story, wonderful record, wonderful psychedelic masterpiece. Coming in at number 11, Days of Future Past. Now this is a masterpiece. Some people feel it's too classical now, it's less psychedelic, but nobody really did anything like this. Obviously, this year Sgt. Pepper came out, and obviously SF Sorrow, people were using orchestras, but this is the first time I remember an orchestra really going along with the entire piece of music. And this was their second album. They really changed it up. Denny Lane had left the group. They were less blues-based. And this is a magnificent tour de force. This is a wonderful symphonic, psychedelic rock and roll record. Again, not psychedelic in the classic sense, and those of you who are really immersed in psychedelia, wah-wah pedal crap will say that's not a psychedelic record. But in the spirit of this video, when I grew up, when I heard this in 1967, headphones going through back and forth, left and right, this was what psychedelia meant to me. And this is how I kind of defined it. It wasn't about psychedelic drugs and that dark, intense, always fuzzed out guitar. That was a version of it, obviously. You could break up psychedelia in so many different ways and so many different subgenres. In fact, someone mentioned that Paul and the Raiders never did a psychedelic album. Go on Wikipedia, look, it talks about psychedelic pop is one of their, one of the attributes of Paul Revere and the Raiders. So, it all depends on your point of view. And I get where people don't see that or don't expect that or just are arbitrary to me. Maybe I'm arbitrary to you, and that's what it takes. Obviously, two big hits on here, Nights in White Satin and Tuesday Afternoon. But this is a great record, and I think it holds up. It's a wonderful... It's one of those records that just is an album of its time, but I think in the right mood, it's still really a great record. So, Days of Future Past, Moody Blues with the London Festival Orchestra, conducted by Peter Knight. Okay, the top 10 now. Okay, the top 10 now. We're in the top 10. Number 10, Sunshine Superman. Donovan again. I like Donovan. To me, his most psychedelic pop record, obviously Sunshine Superman, Season of the Witch. Season of the Witch is an incredible song. covered beautifully by later by a Super Session album with Mike Bloomfield, Stephen Stills, and Al Cooper. Also has in here Fat Angel, a great song, covered by Jefferson Airplane on their live album. They play that. It was a live staple. And that's where Donovan sings Fly Jefferson Airplane, Take You There on Time. Of course, the Airplane had to cover it on their live record, Bless His Pointy Little Head. The Trip, Guinevere, Birch Blues, Legend of a Girl Child, Linda. Psychedelic pop masterpiece. Probably you want one Donovan album. I love the box set that I showed earlier, but if you want the psychedelic pop, short, great songs, this is the one. Incredible record. And this is a mono version, I believe. An original mono I have. I have so many versions of this record because I love it to pieces. I like the stereo too. Stereo might be rechanneled probably, but what a great album. Produced by Mickey Most. Coming in at number nine, Jimi Hendrix, Axis Bold as Love. Incredible record. More psychedelic than the debut, obviously. More spiritual, more ethereal, more spacey. Probably, definitely more psychedelic than that first album. I love this record. This is early 70s pressing, I believe, but Axis Bold as Love. I know this is really high on a lot of charts, would be higher on some charts, but come on, number 9. We're talking the top 10 of psychedelia, British psychedelia, Jimi Hendrix. Now, this is going to piss some people off because over that album, that's number 9. Number 8 is the debut album by the Bee Gees. Those of you who just follow the Bee Gees as a disco band don't know the Bee Gees. This is a perfect pop psychedelic masterpiece. This is their first album. The first song I bought the single of by the Bee Gees was Holiday. Holiday is an amazing song. Very moody, very dirge-like. Best harmony, just second only maybe to the Beach Boys, and probably even better harmonies than the Beatles in so many ways. That brotherly sound that you get, that you don't get when you're not related, is just amazing on this record. Of course, Turn of the Century is a great opening. They do their sort of retro Paul McCartney-esque, harking back to vaudeville type music and barroom type of standards from the 1920s and they mix that kind of psychedelia with those pop kind of standards. New York Mine Disaster, great historical piece. To Love Somebody, I Close My Eyes. Please Read Me. I continually promote that song. It's one of the most beautiful, soulful, gospel-like songs, covered by the great Nina Simone, as well as some other people. Close Another Door, Craze Finton Kirk is almost a gimmicky something that McCartney would do with affected vocals and everything. But every Christian lion-hearted man will show you has great spiritual, almost religious, like the monks, praying monks, chanting monks. Such a gorgeous song. Bee Gees first, great record, and high up on Mazzy's list. Coming in at number 7, the debut by Pink Floyd. Psychedelic masterpiece. I'm sure people are thinking, well, how come I don't have any other Pink Floyd records up here? I could have put more, maybe. Umaguma, I don't think is in my top 30. It's not a great record. There's some great things in it. More, probably. Their second album, maybe Saucerful, but it didn't make I like these records better. It's my point of view. But this record is a wonderful debut. Some people like the later Pink Floyd better, but this is Syd Barrett's band all the way here. Astronomy Domine, or Domine, Astronomy Domine. I said Dominine last time, everyone corrected me. There's an accent on the E, so Domine, 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 Domini, Domini. Lucifer Sam, of course, ends up with Bike. What a great song. Interstellar Overdrive, The Gnome. I think it's too bad Emily Play wasn't tacked onto this. Still a great record. So Pink Floyd's debut record. The Piper, at the Gates of Dawn. Coming in number 6, Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band, The Beatles, 1967, June. Some people would put this number 1. Some people, like to batter it down now because it's been, so overexposed and has been at the top of charts as the best album ever created for so long, which it's not, but it's a fantastic album. Those of you who weren't around in 1967 don't understand how different this was. I almost put this at number 1, but I'm down to number 6, right? Is it 6? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Number 6. Come on, Mazzy. Why do you have this Beatle record at number 6? Because after evaluation of 50 plus odd years, I'm looking at it from the point of view now and trying to reimagine what I remember when it came out. I bought this album, the mono version, not this copy, but the day it came out. I was at the record store, local record store we went to, and the guy was opening the box, and I actually got a stereo copy first, and I actually liked the original stereo copy because I was listening to a lot of headphones. I'd gotten a pair of headphones in, and I just loved this thing. You all know the record. I don't have to get into the details about the music, but those of you who weren't around in 1967 can't even imagine how different this was. From the cover, to the sound, to the lyrics on the back, to the inserts inside. There was nothing like this up to this point. Now it's easy to look back and say, Sgt. Pepper's no big deal, not a lot of great songs. But to me, A Day in the Life may be one of the greatest recorded pieces of music, pop music, ever. I'm going to say another one a little later, but I think it's a masterpiece. It's not a song that people are going to cover in like Yesterday or something like that, but it's an amazing piece of music. Conceptual, sort of. It starts out conceptual and it falls apart. It doesn't tell a story. But it was the first record really that kind of flowed together. No, 8-10 second bands between tracks. It was an ongoing piece of music. And what really affected me, and I know a lot of people I know didn't like it at first, but I fell in love with Within You Without You. To me, that psychedelic Indian influence, literally directly, it's George Harrison and Indian musicians, classical Indian musicians, to me just blew me away. The rest of the record is, I don't think there's one bad cut. Some people now look back on it and like to criticize certain parts of it, but this is an incredible album. So number 6 on my list, but I love this album to pieces, but it's one of those records, you got to get away from, for some years, and then you can go back to it and enjoy it. Sgt. Pepper Lonely Hearts Club Band on Mazzy's great psychedelic 60s British records, number 6. Coming number 5, a record that I truly love, and it's really not a psychedelic record, and it's Jimi Hendrix's probably least psychedelic record, and that's Electric Ladyland. This is the copy that I bought in 1968, soon after it came out. This is the UK original track copy, one of the originals. I know there's several issues with the different size, but I got this right away on Track Records, and it still sounds amazing. This is the cover that Jimi Hendrix didn't like. I did later in the 70s get a reprise version with the close-up of his face in red. I think this is an amazing record. This is jazzy, soulful, jammy. There's a certain sound to this record that the other two Jimi Hendrix records don't have. It's an ambiance. It sounds live in a studio, which I think a lot of it was. When you hear Hendrix's amp crackle, when you hear his just guitar, you hear them playing together, not a bunch of overdubs. And again, I'm not a Hendrixologist that know all the details of the how and why and details about this album recorded. But when I first heard All Along the Watchtower, I was blown away. All Along the Watchtower is not even arguably, it's the best cover version of a Bob Dylan song. It bests the original version. And ironically, I had gotten the year before Dylan's album with All Along the Watchtower and John Wesley Harding, and I didn't recognize it. That song never stuck out for me on that first record. When I heard this version, I didn't realize it was the same song initially. But to me, this is a wonderful record. And I'm putting in this in the psychedelic because, again, it's in the psychedelic scene that was happening in the UK in the late 60s. So coming in number 5 on my list, Electric Ladyland. To me, an amazing, amazing record. A tour de force. Keep saying that, but just a great record. Maybe not as tight as a song, as an album like Are You Experienced or Axis, but to me, this is more of a soulful record, a personal record for Jimi Hendrix, just from my point of view. Number 4, the Beatles' Revolver. This led the way, in my opinion, to a lot of psychedelic stuff that was going on. The Beatles didn't do everything first. In fact, the Beatles are kind of like Apple computers. Sometimes they don't do it first, but they do it best. And of course, there's other ramblings of psychedelia, but they were doing stuff in the studio, backwards guitars, obviously with Rain and the single Rain before this album. But there's so much about this album that I just love. This is my favorite Beatles album. So why isn't it higher, Mazzy? What is number 4? Okay, you'll see. But as a psychedelic, this isn't the best Beatle album video. This is the best UK psychedelic albums from my point of view ranked. And this is a tremendous record. Of course, Tomorrow Never Knows is amazing. Just crazy, crazy ass song. Crazy ass tape loops, reverse things. I want to tell you, Dr. Robert, For No One, and Your Bird Can Sing. Some people don't like that song. I don't get it. That has one of the most amazing guitar riffs of any rock and roll song of the 60s. It's very Eastern. It's very unusual. I play guitar badly, and I have no idea how you play that piece of music. Love You Too, a lot of Indian thing. I'm Only Sleeping has the greatest sort of backwards guitar stuff too. And I originally got the American version, which is a different track listing than this. I didn't get this till probably 1969. And when this came out in 66, I had the American version, which is a different configuration and different mixes. And the UK one's the place to go on this, definitely. I would say maybe on Rubber Soul, it's the opposite. But in this, the way the Beatles intended. And to me, this black and white Klaus Vormann designed illustrated cover montage, it's perfect antidote to this record. I mean, how cool is that? How cool are they? Glasses, black and white. I mean, just before the pop of 1967, Colorful Sgt. Pepper. This at number 4, great psychedelic records from the UK ranked. Coming number 3, probably the greatest psychedelic cover in so many ways, almost like Dayglow, and that's the Cream, Disraeli Gears. What a great record this is. This is psychedelic blues. If you've heard the outtakes and the different versions of some of these songs, you realize some of these were just blues songs until they changed the lyrics. Let's see, which song is it I'm thinking of? Strange Brew, I think, is one. I mean, that was a blues song. Lottie Mama, I believe that's the one, unless I'm getting this wrong. And all of a sudden they change it. Strange Brew is psychedelic. Lottie Mama is blues. So it's the same song, basically, just different lyrics. But obviously, Sunshine of Your Love. How many times have we heard that song? Overplayed, overdone, but a great fucking song. So good. Dance the Night Away, Blue Condition, Tales of Brave Ulysses, maybe the best song on the album from my point of view. Swabber. Now, is it She Walks Like a Bearded Rainbow? But the rainbow has a mustache, but the rainbow has a beard. We're Going Wrong, Outside Woman Blues, Take It Back, Mother's Lament. What a great record. What a great psychedelic record. My friend Tom gave me this as a birthday present when it came out this year, and it's a perfect record. And this is a record that every boy of my age, and probably every girl too, but played this record and had this record in their collection. And it's a fantastic record, and it's one of the greatest psychedelic albums of the 1960s. Disraeli Gears by Cream. Coming at number 2. Another record I didn't get right away, so I didn't get this when it came out, Odyssey and Oracle. Probably the most beautiful psychedelic pop record of the 1960s. The harmonies of the Zombies. It didn't get as much, the accolades on this album percolated over the years. And this is one of those records like SF Sorrow and several others that really didn't get it to do when it came out. Obviously, Time of the Season was a hit. It was actually a pretty big single, at least in the Bay Area when I was growing up. And I had the single. I didn't have this record, I had the single. But once you get this record and you listen to it, A Rose for Emily, Beechwood Park, Friends of Mine, Rod Argent and Colin Blunstone, some of those beautiful, beautiful harmonies and recordings of anything. Very pop psychedelic, gorgeous recording, gorgeous sounding record, except they spelled Odyssey wrong. Did you ever notice that? It's too late. Look at it, they did. But a beautiful illustration, beautiful cover, so psychedelic, a true masterpiece, a record that I didn't buy actually, physically get until, 3 or 4 or 5 years after it came out. But number 2 on Mazzy's best of the UK psychedelic albums of the 1960 is the Zombies, Odyssey and Oracle. Now, number 1 record, and I don't think many people agree with my number 1 choice. And again, I didn't pick this album just to be arbitrary. And some will say, well, you can say it, I'll say it right away. The Beatles didn't make this as an album, Magical Mystery Tour. They made this as an EP. But this is the way the album came out in America. I'm going to argue, and I'm going to say it here from my point of view, this is the best psychedelic album the Beatles ever did. So it's not my number 1 favorite Beatles album, but it's my favorite number 1 Beatles psychedelic album, if that makes any sense. And it is a perfect psychedelic album. I mean, it's a perfect pop psychedelic album. There was stuff they were doing with these songs that no one had done before. Obviously, the first side was from the EP. In the UK, this came out as an EP. But then finally in Germany, in the great copy, the German pressing is a must to get all the full stereo of the songs on side 2. But Magic Mystery Tour, Fool and Hill, Flying. I wish the Beatles did more instrumentals and little sort of ambient things within their songs. That's a beautiful bluesy psychedelic feel. Blue Jay Way, of course, is a George Harrison mystic, perfect song. Your Mother Should Know, some people don't like that sort of retro thing of McCartney, but again, it fits. As I said before, with the Bee Gees and all these other bands, there was a trend by some groups, Idle Race also, to do these sort of retro 1920s, 1930s flapper type songs. And, what your parents would sing in the old days if you were the Beatles growing up or any of these artists. I'm the Walrus, such a perfect single. But of course, side 2, Hello, Goodbye, and Strawberry Fields, and Penny Lane, and Baby Rich Man, All You Need Is Love. Strawberry Fields is, to me, one of the most incredible psychedelic masterpieces. Not only, it's a good song, but it's a better record than it is a song. And if you've heard the bootlegs of the whole progression of John Lennon, writing that as a folk song in Spain, to recording it, to all the different versions and speeds and tunings they did, where John Lennon had George Martin cut several parts together that were different speeds and different tempos, and he had to really cut and make that the great record it is. Strawberry Fields Forever is one of the most incredible records in psychedelic history for me. Love this record to pieces. It's my number 1 psychedelic record from the UK. Now, those of you also will say, well, wait a second, that's not a UK record. How can it be a UK number 1 psychedelic record on a British list? And I'm going to get comments about that, understandably, because it's a British band. It's a record that finally became canon. If you get any of the box sets, if you get any of the later box sets, this was an LP that the Beatles finally accepted as a full album. Of course, they didn't go in to record it as an album. So is that sort of a cheat? I don't think so. This is an album. 1967, end of the year, I bought this as an album, and I love this record. Psychedelic masterpiece, number one. Oh, it's exhausting, isn't it? Thank you again, and Mazzy loves you. All you need is love.